So today I saw an early screening of Transformers 1. Now, a disclaimer right off the bat, if you saw my last two videos, my reviews of Reagan and the My Spy sequel, you know that my throat is still in pretty bad shape, limiting my ability to talk with any semblance of actual volume and causing me to cough a lot. So, expect that throughout the video because I don't know what the problem is, but I'm still dealing with it. So, this is basically the origin story of Optimus Prime and Megatron, as well as many other characters that you're probably familiar with from the Transformers franchise. I guess I should state what my opinions are on the other Transformers movies. The first five are all varying degrees of bad. I don't like any of the Bay films. I'd say 4 and 5 are more tolerable than the first three, purely because there's no Shia LaBeouf. But they're still not good movies. I think Bumblebee is probably the best of the live-action films. It has its issues, but it's a lot better than the Bay films. And then Rise of the Beasts I reviewed last year, and I thought it was pretty decent. I didn't think it was as good as Bumblebee, but it was definitely an improvement over the Bay films. And it actually has a nice setup for a crossover with G.I. Joe, which is apparently still in the works. I don't know what G.I. Joe it's supposed to be crossing over with, because I doubt it's the movies from the early 2010s. Or maybe it'll just be a full-on reboot of G.I. Joe. Maybe it'll connect to Snake Eyes. I don't know. But it doesn't really matter. And I think this is supposed to connect to all of those films. I think every single Transformers film released to theaters in the 21st century are all connected, I think. Because I think Rise of the Beast takes place before... it takes place about a decade after Bumblebee, maybe. And this one takes place, of course, God knows how long before that. And the trailers were really bad for this movie. I'm not ever going to get hyped for a Transformers movie, because it's just not really, because Transformers just don't really grab me. I've never really been a big fan of this franchise. But these trailers were some of the worst I've seen in a good long while. They had really bad humor. They looked nothing like the Transformers franchise. It looked like a damn Saturday morning cartoon. And that's pretty much what the movie is for the majority of the runtime. The trailers accurately show what the movie is for a good hour and 25 minutes. And it's not good. And there are two big reasons for that. First off is the comedy. People like to bitch about comedy in movies nowadays because, God forbid, movies have some levity to them. They're not all just dark doom and gloom movies. That's what people like to bitch about with the Marvel films, but Marvel knows how to write their humor. Most of the time. Ones like She-Hulk or the Marvels didn't do that very well, but those are ones that didn't do really anything well. But then you look at ones like Deadpool and Wolverine, or the Guardians films, or the Avengers films, they all handle their comedy very well, or Thor Ragnarok. They all handle the comedy very well. It's just a matter of the writer. This movie, not a single joke works. The comedy is cringe-inducing, and it takes me out of the movie so bad. Again, people will compare this to, we'll call this Marvel-esque humor. But again, Marvel knows how to write their humor most of the time. This is just, again, it's like they're jokes on par with a Saturday morning cartoon. Like, the entire joke of Bumblebee is he doesn't stop talking. Great joke, and we'll get back to Bumblebee in a little bit. But that leads into my second problem, and that's the voice cast. Now, the cast itself is full of very talented actors. But these very talented actors are in the wrong roles. Hell, Lawrence Fishburne is in this movie as Alpha Trion. Honestly, he would have been a better Optimus Prime. Now, Chris Hemsworth got better as the movie went along. When he had his big speech at the end, right before the final battle, he actually started to sound like Optimus Prime. But up to that point, he just sounded like Chris Hemsworth with an American accent. I'm not saying you had to bring back Peter Cushing because Peter Cullen. But, because a lot of people bitched about the fact that they didn't bring him back. You don't have to do that. You can have somebody else play the part. But I don't think this was the right choice. And Brian Tyree Henry as Megatron? Really? Now, if you don't recognize the name, you might recognize him as the inventor guy from Eternals, the really annoying guy from Bullet Train, and the really annoying guy from Godzilla and Kong movies. you can see a pattern here. He's not funny in this movie, and he's not threatening. His voice, even at the end when he started getting a little better, he's still not threatening enough to be Megatron. I think when they changed into their full forms at the end, I think maybe they should have either changed voice actors, someone who could give it a bit more bass, both, and this goes for Prime as well, or they should have given them some, like, voice modulators, like, tinkered with their voice to make them sound more intimidating. Because ones like, was it Soundwave and Shockwave, they sounded really good. They had, like, 3 lines apiece, maybe, but they sounded really good. These other ones just talk with a normal voice, and it just doesn't sound right. And then there's Keegan-Michael Key as Bumblebee, possibly the worst casting choice I've seen since the Percy Jackson TV series. I don't know what asshole thought this guy would be the right choice for Bumblebee, but I'm already missing the mute Bumblebee from all the other films, because at least I didn't have to hear Keegan-Michael Key. Now, he can be funny in some things, but only some things. He needs some damn good dialogue in order to get a laugh out of me, because he has had not the greatest track record, because he's been in some big films, like he was in Super Mario Bros. Last year, where he played Toad, where he was fine, but he was also in stuff like this shitty 2019 Lion King, where he was one of the hyenas and the really annoying one, and he was in Playing with Fire. He's been in some really bad films, usually as the guy who's supposed to be the big comic relief, but ends up being one of the most annoying characters I've ever seen, and Bumblebee's no exception. He never gets a laugh, and he doesn't shut the fuck up. He's annoying as hell. Scarlett Johansson as Alita is, I guess, fine, but I wasn't a huge fan of the character. Then there's Starscream, played by Steve Buscemi. And I'm gonna be perfectly honest, I thought this character was female until he started hearing Steve Buscemi. His voice sounded like that. It sounded very feminine to start with, but then I eventually figured out it was Steve Buscemi, so that's not a good thing. Like I mentioned, Fishburne plays Alpha Trion, and he's really good, but I think he would have made a better Optimus Prime. And then there's John Hamm as Sentinel Prime. Now, I figured Sentinel Prime would be the villain of this movie, ultimately, partly because he was revealed to be a big twist villain in the 3rd movie. Am I correct? Dark of the Moon, isn't that the one with Sentinel Prime? Where he was voiced much better by Leonard Nimoy. But, and not only was that obvious, he does not sound like a very threatening villain. He sounds like the villain from Robots. And the villain in Robots is just supposed to be some corporate guy. He just sounds like some corporate villain from any other kids movie you can think of, and that's not what he's supposed to be. This doesn't make any sense. So then there's the action. It's fine, but I wasn't a huge fan of the quote-unquote camera work, because there's technically no camera. But I wasn't a huge fan of it a lot of times. There's a lot of really close-up shots for some reason. I don't understand why. This is animation. You can have it look however you want. I don't know why you're resorting to these close-up shots. And a lot of quick cuts. Like, during the final fight between Prime and Sentinel, there were times where there was cuts that lasted, like, a third of a second. It was literally, like, that quick before it cut to the next shot. I don't know what the point of that was. But most of the action is fine. There was, like, a race that goes on at the beginning that kind of reminded me of the rollerball, or whatever the hell it was called, from Alita Battle Angel. It was it was supposed to be like a 5K race, and it was kind of dumb, but... And I guess I should talk about the animations. I mentioned that. It looks fine. I don't really like the human faces on the Transformers. They look really weird. Like, they look like they're straight out of Thomas the Tank Engine. And you can see that in the thumbnail. The picture I chose specifically makes him look like Thomas the Tank Engine. It's really distracting. And hell, this poster right here, I don't know if this is a fake poster or not because it has an October release date on it, but this is way more badass than anything in the movie. I'm going to tell you that much. There's even some really stupid moments in the movie that don't make any sense. They're running, like when the 4 of them first get to the surface, there's like a ship scanning for life forms and everything, which makes sense, and they're trying their best to avoid it. But they're able to avoid it by hiding under a rock. Like, there's, like, a rock here, or, like, almost like a pillar thing, and Optimus and B hide under it, and the scanner goes over it. Like, it doesn't scan them, it scans above the rock. Why? why doesn't it scan through it? That doesn't make sense to me. I don't know. And then there's the rift between Megatron and Optimus, which is supposed to be the big catalyst for this film. And it works-ish. Like, there's a point where, like, Megatron's entire thing is that he's angry at Sentinel because every single moment he's been alive has been a lie at this point. So he obviously wants to get revenge on Sentinel and kill him. But when he first starts his big rant, he suddenly turns his anger towards Optimus for no reason. Like, his big blow up at him is like, oh, you should have just stayed protocol. You shouldn't have brought us to the surface. You shouldn't have done it. It's like, so, I guess Megatron is like every person who votes the left nowadays, because he's not upset that he found out he was lied to, or at this point, he's less upset that he was lied to, and more upset about the fact that that Optimus showed him that he was being lied to. This makes no sense to me. That's the only way I can figure it out, and that doesn't make any sense. And I guess that doesn't help, but just the writing in this movie just isn't very good. Now, outside of the jokes, most of the dialogue isn't that bad. And again, I think the best character in this was Alpha Trion. He was easily the best character in this film. Not just because he was one of the few people that actually sounded like a Transformer, but he actually had some good dialogue to go with it. And I think the final 20 minutes of this film isn't that bad. It's not great. Again, the fight's a little bit of a mess, but I like how the story progresses through that final 20 minutes. Basically starting when Megatron stands up to Sentinel, and then Optimus gives his big speech to the miners to have them fight back. That's when the movie actually started to pick up some steam, but by that point, it was way too little, too late. The movie was already so bad up to that point that it didn't matter how good the last 20 minutes of this could have been like the final battle of Avengers Endgame, and it still wouldn't have been enough to save the film. Now, because that last 20 minutes was actually decent, I can't quite go into F tier for this movie, but this was still this was insufferable to sit through because of the writing and the voice acting, especially out of Keegan-Michael Key. So I cannot give this movie a recommendation. Don't see this film. If you're a Transformers fan, you'll probably go see it anyway. But I don't to any casual viewers, I don't recommend this at all. I'm giving Transformers 1 a D-. So that's all I got. When this movie eventually does fully come out, let me know what you guys think of it. Like, am I missing something here? Because apparently a lot of people are really, like, a lot of people who saw this earlier are really liking the film. This is just not, I just cannot find anything in this movie that was that I was able to latch onto. There was just nothing here, and I would probably never think about this movie again. So that's all I got, and I'll see you next time. Bye.